A new twist in the Madeleine McCann case caught everyone by surprise. A formal complaint was filed against the young woman many believed to be the missing girl. But what really lies behind this allegation? The truth may be even more shocking than any theory that has been raised before. Warsaw Airport. The atmosphere is tense. Julia Wendell, the young Polish woman who shocked the world by claiming to be Madeleine McCann, hurries among the passengers. Her eyes dart quickly, as if she is being watched. Suddenly, security agents surround her. What is happening? For those who have followed Julia's journey, this scene may seem absurd. After all, the truth had already been proven. A DNA test confirmed that she is not Madeleine. The case should have ended there, but it didn't. In fact, a new twist has just placed Julia at the center of yet another controversy. And this time, she cannot simply ignore it. A formal complaint was filed against Julia. Someone decided to take this story forward, not just as an internet theory, but as a legal issue. What did she do to deserve this? Who is behind this action? And most importantly, what does this mean for the future of the case? Questions are piling up, but one thing is clear. This complaint could change everything. What if Julia knew more than she admitted? What if there is something hidden behind this complaint that no one expected? The only way to understand this case is to go back in time and analyze every piece of this puzzle. And the answer might be far more surprising than you imagine. Logic dictates that when a DNA test proves that someone is not who they claim to be, the case should end there. The truth was revealed, right? Wrong. Julia Wendell's case took an unexpected turn. Instead of disappearing from the headlines, the controversy grew. Social media continued to debate her story, experts questioned whether there were more hidden secrets, and even the McCann family was pressured to comment on their supposed connection with Julia. And now something even stranger has happened. Someone decided to turn this controversy into a legal problem. After all, why file a complaint against Julia now? If the DNA already proved that she wasn't Madeleine, what is the real reason for this action? What seemed to be just a crazy internet theory turned into a serious problem. And the reason for this complaint may be far more complex than a simple accusation of fraud. The truth doesn't always end a story. Sometimes it only opens a new chapter. And this new chapter has all the makings to be the most controversial yet. Julia Wendell didn't just claim to be Madeleine McCann. She lived that identity. For months, she gave interviews, appeared on television channels, and convinced thousands of people that her story might be real. She built a following, fueled theories, and made the world question what really happened to Madeleine. But there's a problem with all of this. Her claims were not just empty words. They had real impact. The McCann family, who have suffered for over 15 years with the disappearance of their daughter, were dragged into this new controversy. They had to relive the trauma. They were stalked, scrutinized, pressured, and now with this formal complaint, it becomes clear that someone is not willing to let this story end unpunished. But Julia also suffered consequences. She did not expect her narrative to go so far. After the DNA disproved her claim, support turned into hate. She was attacked, exposed, and now she may face legal problems that she might not have even imagined when she started this journey. The lingering question is this complaint a settling of scores or an attempt to end the story once and for all? And more, who exactly wants Julia Wendell to be held accountable for all of this? The answer may lie in a detail that everyone overlooked until now. Imagine waking up and realizing that your life will never be the same. You check your phone and see thousands of messages. Some offer support, others attack you. Overnight, your name appears in newspapers all over the world. Julia Wendell experienced that. She wanted answers, but in search of her truth, she may have crossed dangerous lines. And now someone wants her to pay for it. But this complaint is not just about Julia. What is happening behind the scenes of this allegation could reveal much more than anyone expected. If this complaint were just a formality, it wouldn't have attracted so much attention. But there is something strange here. Who is behind this? What did Julia do that prompted a formal complaint? And most importantly, could this complaint change everything we know about the Madeleine McCann case? The answer may be closer than we imagine. And what comes next could be even more shocking. The news that Julia Wendell was being formally charged spread quickly. At first, no one understood had already proven that she wasn't Madeleine McCann. Why was there still a legal process against her? Then came the revelation. The complaint came from Julia's own representative, the medium and private investigator Fia Johansson. Yes, the same woman who initially helped Julia become known was now putting her in an even more delicate situation. But why? What could have driven Fia, who spent months by Julia's side, to take this step? According to documents that began circulating, the formal complaint alleged defamation, manipulation, and possible threats. Fia Johansson stated that after the DNA test revealed the truth, Julia began behaving erratically, refusing to accept the results and creating her own versions of the story. The media, always hungry for a new angle, turned this revelation into a scandal. Sensational headlines appeared. Lie, fraud, or illusion. Julia Wendell now faces real consequences. Medium who helped Julia now denounces her. What happened? The supposed Madeleine McCann may soon face legal action. But while the public tried to understand what was happening, Julia disappeared from social media. Previously, she posted videos almost daily, interacting with followers. Now her profile was silent. This complaint was not just a legal process, it was a sign that something was out of control. But the central question remained, did Julia lie from the start, or did she really believe her own story? The answer to that question could change everything. And what came next would only make the case even more confusing. The complaint against Julia Wendell divided opinions. On one side were those who believed she was being punished for deceiving the world, people who felt betrayed, who had followed her story with hope, and now saw her as nothing more than someone in search of fame. On the other side were those who saw Julia as a victim of her own delusion and of the media. To them, Julia was used, exposed, and now being discarded. But as discussions took over social media, one thing was certain: the exposure had come at a high price. Julia went from unknown to a global figure in just weeks. She was exalted and then attacked, accused of opportunism and delusion. Now with the complaint, she risked facing serious legal implications. And the most shocking part? The McCann family was also paying the price for this controversy. From the beginning, the McCanns stayed away from the confusion. But that didn't stop their name from coming back into the spotlight. They had to relive all the trauma once again. Yet again, Madeleine's disappearance was being discussed not because of new evidence, but because of a baseless theory. And all this leads to a disturbing question. Who really profited from this story? Julia? The media? Or was there someone behind the scenes benefiting from it all? This complaint was not just a consequence of the controversy. It was a reflection of how the internet can transform a personal story into a public spectacle, and in the end, destroy those at its center. But the most impressive part was yet to come, because this complaint was only the beginning. The question now was, could this complaint be just one piece of a much larger game? The complaint against Julia Wendell completely changed the course of the story. What was once just a curious case of someone claiming to be Madeleine McCann had now become a real legal problem, with possible severe repercussions. Julia's reaction was immediate. She disappeared from social media. Her profiles, once updated almost daily, went inactive. Supportive comments were replaced by criticisms and questions. But the impact didn't stop with her. The McCann family once again found themselves in the center of a media storm. After years of trying to move on, Madeleine's name was back in the headlines, not because of new evidence or investigations, but because of another scandal. Kate and Jerry McCann avoided making public statements about the matter, but sources close to them said they were frustrated and exhausted by all this unnecessary exposure. Meanwhile, the media explored every detail of the complaint. Some newspapers suggested that Julia had been manipulated and discarded, while others argued that she knew exactly what she was doing from the start. And then came an even more shocking revelation. Julia could face legal consequences for defamation and possible psychological harm caused to third parties. This raised an uncomfortable question. When does a public allegation cease to be just a supposition and become a crime? The answer to that question may be much more complicated than it seems. Now, there is something we need to understand about this case. Did Julia really know she was lying, or did she truly believe she was Madeleine? Researchers of the human mind have studied influences, suggestibility, and even an intense desire to belong to a narrative. People can indeed believe in something that never happened. Could Julia Wendell have been a victim of this phenomenon? Or was her story reinforced by something even more powerful? The effect of social media. When Julia made her first statement claiming to be Madeleine McCann, the impact was instantaneous. Thousands of people shared the story, pointed out physical similarities, analyzed small details, and reinforced their belief. This creates a dangerous effect: confirmation bias. The more support someone receives for an idea, the harder it becomes to abandon it, even when concrete evidence shows otherwise. And that is exactly what happened with Julia. But there was something even more concerning. When a story becomes too big to control, it can spiral out of control and affect lives in irreversible ways. Now that we understand what led the situation to the extreme, let's explore a twist that could completely change the way we view this case. The complaint against Julia Wendell not only shook her life, but also raised a worrying question about the impact of unverified theories on the internet. When Julia made her claims, she believed she was in search of the truth. But as investigations progressed, it became clear that her story wasn't just about a case of mistaken identity. It was a reflection of the power of social media in creating uncontrollable narratives. The formal process against her brought a dilemma. Should Julia be held accountable for what she did, or was she just a victim of her own belief? The lawyers for medium Fia Johansson, who filed the complaint, argued that Julia refused to accept the truth and harmed many people with her claims. Meanwhile, Julia's defenders claimed that she was manipulated and encouraged to continue with her story even after the DNA test. The truth lay somewhere in between. Julia was both the villain and the victim, but one thing was certain: the damage was already done. The McCann family's name was back in the media, bringing painful memories. Julia's reputation was completely destroyed, and now she faced real consequences. The internet proved once again how it can turn anyone into the protagonist of a narrative, regardless of the truth. In the end, the case became an extreme example of what can happen when rumors grow larger than the facts. And this leads us to an even more important question. To what extent should society allow stories like this to spread uncontrollably? Julia Wendell's case was not just another fake internet story. It showed how the collective obsession with theories and mysteries can create a spiral of misinformation with devastating consequences. Think about it. Today, anyone can become the target of an internet theory. All it takes is for a story to gain traction, for the narrative to be convincing enough, and suddenly facts and evidence stop mattering. Did Julia believe what she was saying? Or did she simply see an opportunity and go for it, even when she knew she was wrong? The answer to that question may never be fully clarified, but the impact of what she did goes far beyond her. This case makes us reflect on the responsibility of those who create and share stories on the internet. The desire to believe in something can be more powerful than the truth itself. And the worst part, it could happen again. The internet doesn't forget. And as long as there is a mystery, there will always be someone ready to fill it in, even without evidence. Julia Wendell's case showed us something disturbing. The truth can become irrelevant when a story grows big enough. It all started with a doubt, a suspicion that by itself would not have gone far. But then the internet amplified that doubt and turned Julia into a piece of a global mystery. Thousands of people analyzed her photos, compared features, connected coincidences. Gradually, the supposition became a possibility. And when the DNA test proved that Julia was not Madeleine McCann, that should have been the end of the story. But it was quite the opposite. The controversy only grew. This leads us to a crucial question. What is stronger, the truth or collective belief? The McCann family, who have suffered for over 15 years with the uncertainty of their daughter's whereabouts, were dragged back into the spotlight by a baseless theory. People began to pressure them, demand answers, and seek their opinions, as if they hadn't suffered enough already. And Julia, her name was marked forever. She went from being unknown to a public figure in a matter of weeks. At first, she was embraced, received support, and gained followers. But as soon as her story was debunked, the very internet that elevated her worked to bring her down. Now, with a formal complaint against her, Julia faces the consequences of her own narrative. Did she know she was lying, or did she really believe she was Madeleine? This is the point where things get even more complex. There is a psychological phenomenon called false memories. It explains how the brain can create recollections of events that never happened. And the most frightening part, these memories can feel as real as any other. People can, without realizing it, reconstruct their past based on distorted fragments. A detail here, a suggestion there, and suddenly they remember something that never existed. This makes us wonder, did Julia really believe what she said? Confirmation bias also plays an important role. The more people reinforced the idea that Julia was Madeleine, the harder it became for her to abandon that belief. She was encouraged, welcomed, validated, until suddenly everything collapsed. The psychological impact of this can be devastating. What happens when the identity you believed you had is ripped away from you? Maybe Julia was a victim of her own mind, or perhaps she saw an opportunity and decided to seize it until the very end. But in the end, the truth didn't even matter anymore. What matters is the effect this story had on the real lives of those involved. And what if I told you that our memory can be manipulated? If this case shocked you, just wait until you understand how our minds can deceive us without us realizing. Many people believe that memory functions like a filing system, a faithful record of the events we live through. But science proves otherwise. Research shows that memories can be modified, rewritten, and even created from scratch. You might swear you remember something with absolute certainty, and yet be completely wrong. This explains why so many people convince themselves of false stories. And it also explains why cases like Julia Wendell's continue to happen. If you want to understand how false memories can completely change the perception of reality, I have a recommendation that will surprise you. In the first pinned comment, I left a link to an amazing book that delves exactly into this subject. Take a look because this knowledge might change the way you see everything around you.